So the question that I have is,
Yes,
are you going to try to provoke me again?
I am. We'll see if I succeed.
seriously.
Did I try to provoke you last time?
I think you inadvertently provoked me.
Did I? Well, that's part, it's the only contribution I can make is to try to
provoke me. I was like, dude, stop saying stuff that's just going to make me go off the deep end.
Yeah. So, full transparency, because I always believe in full transparency.
All right. As he looks at his
Except
son.
for when you don't.
Except for when I don't. Is the pregame for this episode. Ooh, I just looked into the lights. The pregame went on a little longer this time than usual because of some sort of traffic problem that somebody was having. And
fire me when you hire me.
That's
well, dude, if you live in a normal
catchphrase.
place.
Fire me when you hire me. Meaning I'm still volunteering. So because our warm-up went on a little longer, we're already on our second round.
Yeah.
Right.
In fact, it's entirely possible this episode might happen in Spanish. I don't know, but
Muy posible.
because you guys kind of just weave in and out of it.
That actually is a challenge that when you grow up speaking two languages, that once you're no longer conscious of what you're doing, or not conscious, but 100% on and focus on what you're doing, that
Right.
you just relax and
Spanglish comes out. The Spanglish comes out.
Yeah.
By the way, salud. Or,
Yes.
Salute.
cheers.
Salud. Salud.
Italian, it's
Salud. Cheers.
So, Tony, it's been a while since you've been here. So
It's actually been 1 year.
So that was under the old format when I just we were continuously just trying to find new and interesting guests.
Oh, so he's not new and interesting anymore?
I'm old, but
He's-
not interested.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Canada.
what? What?
To Canada
To Canada.
with him.
Canada?
With the maid. Have you forgotten already? All the medical assistants in dying? You forgot that conversation already?
Yeah, we did do that. So then we decided that trying to find this constant stream of new interesting people was too much work, and unfruitful.
So now you're just focused on people that you can provoke.
Right.
That's why I'm here again.
Bingo.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the topic today is this thing called the ARC Forum, which I only recently learned about. But
How did you learn about it?
I think I saw it probably on Instagram or something. But I saw that it was actually a Jordan Peterson, which I know you said a minute ago. Who's Jordan Peterson? He was doing a promotional video for it, and I looked it up. Trev, can you pull up the web? Just pull up the website. The ARC. And lest you think that this is some sort of a just a couple of unknown yahoos trying to do something to get noticed. Sounds familiar.
Right.
I feel like I know somebody who's doing that. There's some big names involved with this. Is there? I don't know where's the yeah.
It doesn't seem like people that need to be promoting themselves in a way to shove money in their pockets. It does not seem like that at all.
No,
it's like
not,
people that have already had
Bjorn
their
Lomborg.
career.
Yeah. And there's Crenshaw. I didn't know Crenshaw was there.
I did not. All of a sudden, I'm paying attention. Crenshaw is a part of this.
Yeah, the eye patch gets me every time. Anderson Howard, Jonathan Pajot. Yep. I know Jordan. I saw. There's Jordan Peterson. Yeah. So anyway, go to the about page. So here's how I'm going to set this up. Instead of me doing my usual like 3 minutes of talking to set it up, I stumbled on this, and I thought it was really interesting. So, the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship International Community, with a vision for a better world where every citizen can prosper, contribute, and flourish. As you read about what they're doing, it's very the whole thing is let's get in a mindset of life can be good. Let's look at what's positive. And actually, let's see what no, go back up. Life has improved over the past few centuries, right? We say that all the time. We live longer, we're better, blah, blah, blah. We got, life is better now. But by the way, for those of us involved in the oil and gas industry, thanks to affordable, abundant energy, life is now better than it was even 100 years ago. Despite these long-running upward trends, we are at a defining moment in our society's growth, at least in the West, has stagnated. And there is a growing skepticism and anxiety about the sustainability of human development. Human development? What? Human development? We hear about this all the time now, like with this mental health crisis, because the kids wake up and they're worried about the climate and all this. The values which once provided unity are contested, a culture is more polarized and fragmented, and there is a sense of fragility and crisis which pervades everything. And we know that. We see that all the time now. It's this crisis and it's that crisis, and we're always, and so their whole thing is, let's, instead of looking at the world as being a place that's about to be crumble under crisis, let's look at it differently. And go on to the next bit there, Trev. The video is really good. We can't play the video because I don't think our video feed's not wired for sound, so you wouldn't hear the sound. But so the ARC has drawn together these people from all different places. Our ambition is to draw on our moral, cultural, economic, and spiritual foundations to imagine a future where empowered citizens take responsibility and work together to bring flourishing and prosperity to their homes, communities, and beyond, just like they do on Twitter. So this is clearly a picture of the world that is different from what we're experiencing right now. And this is what they're all about. We are citizens from around the world, but each of us recognize that our societies are at a turning point. The time to develop a better story is now. And we invite you to join us in building this vision together. So that's what they're about. And so I was looking at this and I thought, it sounds right. Like, it sounds like what the world ought to be doing now instead of what we are doing. But is it achievable? Is it realistic? Is our society in the West in particular even really capable of getting, like, our current, the people, Delfina's already looking at me like, what in the hell are you talking about? Like, are we able to, like, get above and beyond all the bullshit that we constantly are having anxiety about and fighting about and arguing about, and actually, like, do what these people are saying? And they have a set of questions that I sent you guys. So I want to go through I thought it'd be fun to actually look at their questions and do our own answers to their questions, because they invite people to go to the website and to, like, submit your own answers to these questions, which is kind of interesting. But before we do that, like, how does it strike you just in general? Like, this whole concept that here's a group of people that are trying to do something. So they're not ringing the alarm bell and saying, the climate is we're about to burn up. And they're not sounding the alarms about all the crisis and the pandemics. And they're saying, we need to stop with all that and get together and look at creating a more positive, optimistic world.
So at the height of the 2020 crisis, which was, not just the health crisis, but also the social crisis we had in America. I remember
about that.
Right?
Yeah.
I remember telling my wife, where is the accompanying philosopher? Who is the man or the woman or the group of philosophers who can provide perspective over what is happening in today's world? In the past,
Klaus Schwab, that's your man right there.
Klaus Schwab, okay. Sure. But we've really had, in all of human history, we've had a philosopher that helped us navigate.
So, like, for example, for those who are younger than you and me and Delfina, like who would be some examples of those philosophers that showed up at the right time and helped us?
I think if you go back, I mean, in every episode in history, there's been one. Think of the American Revolution, right? Mm-hmm. The founding fathers went to Europe and they obtained the ideas of Voltaire and Rousseau, right? Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and others, they traveled there and they brought those. They brought back Locke, they brought back Hume, and basically the foundational
all those white supremacist
of
guys.
Our country.
Yeah,
they were based on those philosophers, right?
Yeah.
But in today's world, and that's what I was telling my wife in one of the many episodes and days of just isolation from the world, was that I thought our world had gone through very quick, dramatic change, especially because that was the year that we truly saw the power of social media, the power of how fake news can spread immediately, right? And how the voice of the loud voices of social media basically put the world in a path to almost self-destruction during 2 years.
Right.
So I was telling her, I wish we have someone who helped us navigate through all of this technological change, right? Just as we had in the past Locke, we had Hume, we had Voltaire, we had Rousseau. Earlier in the 20th century, right? We had Heidegger, we had Sartre, right? And they helped us navigate the post-World War II world. We didn't have those voices. They came in too late. I welcome ARC because I think those are the voices that help put everything into perspective, right? Talk about a time when everything is exaggerated because it is easy to exaggerate, right?
Yeah.
There's no longer the need to have a publisher, right? You can just go to social media and get on the train with that, now they call it hashtags, but that's a new thing. It's not really a hashtag, right? That's but anyway, it's an easy way to exaggerate over things. So I welcome this group because finally there are some philosophical voices that help us navigate our times.
Yeah. I hadn't thought of that.
It was too quick. So if you think about all of the industrial revolutions of the past, well, they were slow, right? I mean, you're talking about the locomotive, right? Well, that took hundreds of years, right? It was technological change was slow, but this one came too quick.
It was
right?
fast, yeah.
So there was not I'll say a body of knowledge that allowed us to build the ethical framework to navigate all of this. So it was reactionary. It was irrational.
So a question is, would not we in this room, because obviously we're smart enough, but had there been that voice of context and perspective, would it have done any good? Would we have listened to it? Or would the rest have overpowered that? Because your example of the American Revolution, the advantage was you had this one small group of people who was sort of wielding influence over the whole thing, and they were able to go tap into the smarts of those philosophers, bring that back and inject it into what was happening without like the widespread shit show that we have now, because influences are so varied and so spread out. Anyway, Delfina, the wheels are really cranking over there. So
they're cranking. I think that. So when Tony was speaking about having that voice, that a philosopher or philosophies,
right,
that we could turn to for guidance, I would argue, and again, this is a friendly argument,
this
right?
is why we invite her, so that she argues.
So yes, I'm all about arguing.
That's the whole point.
But if you don't argue back, then it's no fun.
It's not fun.
It's no fun. Right? I would argue that not much has occurred in the human condition that we have not experienced in the past, and that our trusted philosophers and thought leaders of the past could not provide enlightenment for, but that the difference today is an acceleration and proliferation of information or lack of or false information, right? It's not that we can't rely on those brilliant minds of the past. And I don't think that the fundamental human condition and mindset and behaviors that result from our own personal lives, situations, economic stages, positions, that they're any different. It's just that we're living in a different world where things are far faster. So I think back to Thomas Friedman, the Lexus and the Olive Tree, that type of thinking, that now with having that connectivity and the voices that were allowed to share information from remote parts of the world, and being able to hear voices from the other side of the world in remote places that didn't have a voice in the past. Now today they do have a voice, or at least we can see and we can hear. So as Tony's talking, I'm thinking about that maybe somebody didn't emerge as the voice, but did we really need somebody to emerge as the voice, or was it incumbent upon us to reach into our own values as human beings and as a society? So in the United States of America, we have a very strong foundation, especially here in the great state of Texas. Who was it that said earlier today, maybe it was which one of you that said earlier today in a casual conversation that if people love Texas,
people love this was a high school kid that recently moved here who said, his family's been here for 6 weeks, and he said, if people in other places loved the United States as much as Texans love Texas,
we'd be unstoppable.
Yeah, we'd be unstoppable.
Yeah,
Our country would be unstoppable. Yeah.
So do we really need that philosopher to give us guidance? Do we really need a big group like this to give us guidance? Or can we just look into our own values?
In theory,
to give us
could, but we don't seem to do it much, right? That's kind of the problem.
Okay.
I mean, I think that the point, I think what they're trying to do is not to impart some knowledge on us that we didn't have before, which is kind of like what maybe the philosophers were able to do in past times, but more to say, to change our way of looking and say
our perspective.
We're not, and if you follow Bjorn Lomborg with what he says about climate, it's very much this message, which is stop thinking that we're constantly on this path of crisis and destruction and despair. Learn to be optimistic. Learn to look at, the whole picture in context and understand that we have great opportunities, right? It's more about like changing, because we seem to be getting, in spite of whatever we might be able to muster out of our own, like the spirit of human whatever, we seem to be like constantly being dragged into this frame of mind that we're in crisis. Kids, like young people, are having like real mental health problems because they worry every single day about global warming, about the climate. and not even just young people, like even like young adults and things like this. So I think it's more about changing. And then the other thing is, so we're dreading all of these crises and these things, and of course the media plays up on the fears and the uncertainty and everything else, right? And then we also have this constant, they mentioned in here, polarizing. Like nobody in the public square is having a reasonable, balanced discussion, debate anymore. Everything is just, like there's no, and these guys, I saw a little video clip today. It was on Twitter, Instagram, I can't remember. It was Chris Christie.
Yep. Love Chris Christie.
What was he eating?
And of course, the hardcore right, they don't like Chris Christie because he's not like right-wing conservative enough.
Yes.
And so, but Chris Christie was saying something, and he was getting booed at some event, and his response was actually, we're not gonna replay it right now, but anyway, if you took the words that he said, and you didn't know who said them, they were actually quite reasonable and quite
I saw
respect. Did you see that? He basically said, this kind of like bullshit is beneath what we ought to be as a country trying to elect a president.
Yeah.
And he went on to say, but and he said, and if my views are all such garbage and yours are all so great, then why don't you just be quiet and let me say my ridiculous thoughts, and then you can just dismiss them out of hand and we'll be done. But instead you become combative, and he actually, I thought it, and I'm not like a huge Chris Christie fan or anything, but I thought that actually what he just said made a lot of sense. But if you read in the comments, right, of what, all of it was how many donuts did he eat before he, right? Yeah. But it was people who were just of a certain frame of mind, who were sort of hard right conservatives, were just ridiculing him for even speaking.
But see, what you're pointing out is contrasting what Tony is saying. Mm-hmm. When you pose the question of all of this to Tony sat back and he said, "Let me think about this."
She's very systematic, this one.
Nothing gets past me. So let me think about this from a thinking man's perspective, from a logical perspective. Let me approach this. I'm having a conversation with my wife, and I'm wondering, is there a philosopher that I can draw from? Is there other inspiration that will help me form my opinion? And you're contrasting that with this reactionary soundbite society that we have. If you listen to my show, you'll hear me talk about these young people with their sound bites because they listen to TikTok that's only 15 seconds long, and the only thing they're capable of is a 15-second soundbite without the thought that goes behind it, right? Which is what Tony was trying to do.
I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Right? Already, this has already gone too long, too far, too long.
To that generation.
Right.
You have no excuse.
I don't.
This reactionary, and Christie is basically saying, just let me speak. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a dialogue.
Yes.
Let's have a discussion.
Yeah.
Right?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's so, I think there's many differences with the past, right? So in the past, there was some time to think about things.
Yeah.
So technology came at a very gradual step, and the transformation wasn't as radical as it is today.
Right.
Yes.
We had like 20, 30 years between radio and TV.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, it took time for things to...
Today it is so quick, right? And, it's so quick that I don't think the thinkers have really an opportunity to provide some perspective as to, okay, what we're about to do. So 2020 was...
Or even a means to wield that influence.
Yes.
Right? Like even if they were there, how do they get ahead of this snowball of interaction that's happening in the world?
Because it all depends on the hashtags that the algorithms count in social media. And if the hashtags say, stop global warming, if the hashtag say mask or mask up or however you want to call it, vaccinate.
Yeah.
If the hashtag say whatever the right wants to hear, whatever the left wants to hear, right? Then it's very difficult to go past those hashtags, because now we really read everything in our phones, right? So I thought we had a vacuum of a thinker. It was one of those critical moments in history. During the French Revolution, we had them. During the American Revolution, we had them. In World War I, we had them. In World War II, we had them. But it was interesting, to me at least, to see that we didn't have a real thinker sort of helping us navigate through this very difficult era.
But wait, Tony, here's the question. Even if we had a thinker,
Right.
would they have been able to think quickly enough?
No.
Comment quickly enough?
Even if they could think quickly enough, how do you get their thoughts
How do you get their thoughts out?
ahead of that? Right.
Right?
Yeah, you can't.
Not even, but no to both.
That was my point about
Quick enough.
the founders of the country.
Yeah.
They didn't have to, this is a whole bunch of people living here doing shit, right?
Yes.
And these guys go over and they have time to get the thoughts and to inject
Read all of the books.
into
It's a different world.
and inject it into, like, here's what we're gonna do, everybody, right? Now I don't know how you would.
We were just trying to navigate through social media, right? We were
Right,
trying to
right.
go through okay, so this is a different world because people now have a digital persona, right? And they are meaner and they are more patriotic, but they're also more anti-patriotic, and they're more religious and they're also more anti-religious. It's a place where everything gets exaggerated, right?
Yes.
So we were just going through that, and then all of a sudden, we started dealing with artificial intelligence, right? How now, it's not just that it's easy for you to present thoughts in those networks. It is actually very easy to just automate the thoughts, right? And depending on what those algorithms, depending on how they're built, then there's always going to be certain thoughts that prevail over others. In oil and gas, we've tried our best to educate the public about the benefits of having affordable fossil fuels for society, fossil fuels that have actually ignited economic growth and prosperity, right? But we have lost that debate miserably. I know that Bjorn is going to be part of this group, and Bjorn is great, but I'll tell you, he has a lot of work to do, because that debate, and maybe we can debate about this, but I argue that it was already lost.
And the reason why we lost that debate is not because the debate ever completed. It was because all of a sudden it was declared to be such, right? Even if I don't take a side on which side of the debate is right or not, the point is that all of a sudden one day it was declared that this is how it is, and
I refuse to accept defeat.
Well, but the.
And that is,
so whether we
I disagree
or not,
right, that is the right.
But whether we accept,
I disagree.
but the
That
point
is the
is
right
that
thing to
it
do,
was
yeah.
like one day what was yesterday being debated was today presented as the debate is over. These are the facts, and everybody said, most people in society accepted the conclusion of the debate that never concluded.
But I would disagree with that.
Yes,
That's why. See, you did it to me again, Sully.
I am. We got to get to the questions too. So
We do have to get the questions, but you did it to me again. I said to you, you're going to find a way to provoke me. And you found a way to provoke me.
Good.
Well, it started with the margaritas, but
It did.
Anyway,
Well, Jeez. No, I think that that is part of what these people at ARC are saying.
Right.
Is that there? I do not believe there is a foregone conclusion, because I think that there is part of the discussion, which we will get to the questions, is that this is a global issue. And I do not think that it is acceptable that people living in first world nations can simply say, this is what it needs to be for the entire world.
Sure, I'm with you.
I mean, I grew up in a third world nation. Tony grew up in a third world nation.
Mexico is like 2.5. It's like
2.5. Yeah, Mexico's kind of 2.5, right? Well, where he grew up, it's kind of first world, but the rest of Mexico is third world, so it makes it 2.5, right? But there's that's part of the challenge, is that we may hear in first world nations, and Europe especially, have said, oh, well, this is the narrative now that fossil fuels need to go away, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that is accepted in the rest of the world. Let's take a look. Remember at CERAWeek when the president of Petronas stood before everybody on the stage and said, you are enforcing a philosophy upon me and my country that basically is counter to my country's well-being.
Yeah. And that's a Malaysian guy. They're usually pretty polite. So
he was very polite. He was very well spoken.
To make a statement that strong.
So to the arc.
By the way, the European countries now, there's like a next level above first world. They're like 0.7.
But anyway, sorry.
Okay, let's look at the questions.
Go ahead. Let's go to the questions.
Take us through the questions.
What questions? What are these questions?
So they invite people to come here and say, ARC's questions are an invitation to share your responses to what we believe are some of the most pressing matters of our time. And so it's kind of neat because they're soliciting input, and and I guess if they get any really good answers from anybody, maybe we'll submit our tape as an audition. If they get any really good answers, maybe they'll ask people to. This is a way to find out. Well, kind of to your point, where are the thinkers out there, and what can they provide us? So, the first question: vision and story. Can we find, we being, humanity? Can we find a unifying story that will guide us as we make our way forward? I mean, that's a very broad, but it's telling, because what they're saying here is, before we get into any details, folks, we don't seem to really have a unifying story, purpose, direction. We're just sort of, I guess. I don't know. What do you think when you hear that story?
Tony needs to go because
it's interesting, because if you go back to even Sophocles or Plato or Aristotle,
I didn't know he was such a philosophy nut.
I love it.
And all the way to the existentialists, the goal is to try to find truth. Truth through facts, and at some point, someone like Nietzsche would say God is dead, symbolizing the end of, let's say, the theological phase of human history, and
what he actually meant was the pursuit of God.
Pursuit of God.
Yeah.
Right.
So, which it wasn't, by the way, just to be clear. But
we've always been in pursuit of truth, and basically, the best decision and the best path forward is the path of truth. And you will find that through, and depending on what the era was, but it was basically through the scientific method, right? Basically. I think, my opinion...
Scientific method combined with kind of like Aristotelian logic and metaphysical sorts of ways of trying to arrive at conclusions logically.
But elements, for example,
those,
where Aristotle had 4, right? And now we have, how many elements we had in that periodic table? I forgot. But based on what 7. They knew at the time, right? So I think in today's world, we have reverted back to a dogmatic approach towards life. I think we really are rejecting science, truth, facts, and we're dogmatic. We no longer embrace or we're no longer quiet to questions. We rush towards an answer depending on what that dogma or that ideology is. So I think a vision.
Where does the dogma come from now, though? So I get your point about we decide how we want things to be, and then we sort of orchestrate everything to that conclusion. But how do we derive the new dogma?
Well,
I don't mean how.
No, I don't think that's what he's saying.
So it depends on. I don't think we. So I'm not.
I'm not saying how should we derive it. I'm saying how do we end up with these? How today does society end up with these dogmas that are not necessarily truth based?
I think
the word he used was rush.
Social media.
Rush.
The word he used was rush.
That's rushing,
social
right?
media.
The rush, yeah.
We jump to conclusions based on the ideology. So if I am Muslim, I immediately conclude that the Israelis are occupying Gaza. If I am Christian or evangelical or Judeo-Christian, right, just general Western, I guess, I immediately conclude that all of the Palestinians are terrorists and, they must be occupied and subjected, right?
Yeah.
Nobody is taking the time to, let's read a book on, Middle Eastern history. Let's really find out what the facts are. Let's really ask the right questions and come up with, this is truth, this is not, this is truth, this is not. You suddenly see protests in the street, and they're either, the Palestinians are holy men and women that should be protected, for all reasons. And, you find the other extreme, which is the state of Israel are completely holy. And, the answer is actually somewhere there in the middle, right? But nobody cares to answer. We just have these reactions, right? Donald Trump is, the reincarnation of Lucifer on earth, or Donald Trump is the new savior that God brought to save this country, right? And the same goes for Joe Biden, right? Nobody is really now, seeing the shades of gray, right? And philosophy throughout history was about finding the facts, finding truth. So if there was a vision that I would suggest for the ARC group, is convincing society that we need to reject all of our dogmas. We need to go back to understanding facts and trying to obtain context before coming to a conclusion.
Yeah.
We've lost that practice.
Tony, we have fact checkers. What more do you want?
Can I argue that a little bit?
Please.
I don't disagree with Tony. But I think that a benefit that this group is bringing to the table is a balance because I think that it's what you're highlighting is this rush to opine. A rush to opine sans the logical, disciplined thinking that you tried to do when you were having a conversation with your wife that doesn't exist anymore today, that everybody is rushing to make their point, to say what they have to say because that's our 15 seconds of
to reinforce the thing they already think.
Right.
Yeah.
And not taking the time to think is you have to get out there. I think that what this group is bringing to the table is that says that so many people, it's really easy to quickly come down on the side of negativity, right? It's very easy to quickly attack somebody, to say the opposite. And this is what I think. What they're saying is, if you're going to do that, do it from a perspective of positivity, of optimism, that there is good in the world. So if we're going to quickly react, that I don't care what it is that you say or do, Mr. Negative person putting stuff out there, or even factual person that is putting a difficult fact out there. I'm going to approach it from an open mind, from a place of, we can tackle this, we can overcome it, we can find a better way forward, versus this is horrible, this is terrible, let's fight each other and come. So I don't know. What do you think of that?
I think actually, so ironically, what you guys just said leads perfectly into the next question.
Oh, let's go.
This is what makes me a good host.
You're so good.
It's my.
We just set you up so that you can hit the ball out of the park.
What? Death to ideology.
Death to ideology.
Thank you, Trevor. Thanks for summing.
Thanks, Trevor.
7 minutes of babbling. He summed up in 3 words.
3 words. Death to ideology.
Death to ideology. Okay, next.
Okay,
We're
next.
submitting. Okay, excellent. How do we facilitate the development of a responsible and educated citizenry?
Oh, boy.
This is the one where I have the most negative outlook, because I think educators, as humans,
Okay.
have also failed society. I think educators, whether they're at the elementary level or at the postgraduate level, they have subscribed to a dogma. And that makes things very tricky, because then the responsibility of showing balance, or perhaps giving the youth the example of, look, you have to be pragmatic about things, always, doubt, give people the benefit of the doubt. Everyone is innocent,
The problem is fluoridation.
Is what?
Fluoridation. That's where it all started. When they started putting fluoride in our water.
That was it.
That was the communists,
ruined
the
everything.
fluoridation, and the no, but what you're describing is something that is really missing, which is try just making an effort to understand where somebody's coming from. Like I don't agree with you, but I get where you're coming from. I understand why. Like that's absent from
It is.
But Trevor's leaning in. Were you? Did you have something?
I'm
Death
always
to
ready,
ideology.
but I will.
I'm an expert with body language, just so you know.
Yeah, nobody believes that. Okay, Trevor.
I'm an expert in your
Depends on the
mom's
body.
body language.
It's his own kid. He knows his body language. Let's go, Trevor.
You can strip this down to a little simpler.
Don't say strip after I just said body.
Yeah, really, Trevor.
Don't say something while I'm saying something.
All
How
right,
about
go
that?
ahead.
To get it down to a more simpler level, you can look at this from the perspective of parents, and it's because they are the first educators.
Yes.
So I think the root cause, if you're going to get at there, you can go after the educators all you want in the schools and such, but it's the children who are being sent there are not en masse, aren't set up with the appropriate facilities to filter out what they're receiving.
They have no backing found. Yeah, it's open season on them, basically.
That's right.
Yeah, and we see that now
Many times.
very heavily with with all the
Don't say
drag
gender.
show
Don't say gender.
with all the and the
Damn it! Now we're canceled.
and the drag show controversies going on, and the literal strip shows happening in elementary schools and such, and
Delfina.
and those are
Catch you up later.
and there are parents bringing their children to these quote unquote, you see on posters all the time in schools now. It's family friendly drag shows. So I think that's would be the very obvious example of how parents, the primary and first educators, are failing the children. And you can't facilitate a school education to those who are uneducated from home.
Yeah, I followed you up until the point. So the idea that kind of the erosion of that like family basis of learning, not like because everybody is so. It seems to me anyway nowadays that most families spend most of their time running in different directions and doing different things, and there's not, we had an episode a while back where we looked at there's like a correlation of how many families who eat dinner together correlated to like kids getting in trouble with drugs and things like this. And so I don't know where you were going with the drag shows exactly, but that's an example of how parents are failing their children, is they are allowing this and they're permitting them and bringing them and encouraging them. But if I'm a parent and I'm raising my kids how I want because the government allows me to do that as it should, then if I think I want my kids to be at drag shows, then
I agree with Trevor in that. So recently, my 7-year-old son, had a school event that was a play where the main character was someone that belonged to the let's say the LGBTQ community. So he was someone who identifies with a different gender than the one that he started with. He started right, and the play basically talked about that.
Wait, that journey. Was the character, or that was the actual kid?
That was the character.
So the
and
play
the person was playing, right?
But that's what the play was about.
So this was a transsexual person who was in a play, and the topic was precisely that.
It
is important to mention that my son goes to a private Catholic school in the Houston area.
Wow.
So I could be friends with families who are okay with that topic. I really could. I don't have an issue with that. The issue I have is, why was that brought into a school setting? Why was that brought? Why was that necessary?
Yeah.
Why is that necessary? Why is it necessary for a 7-year-old to get into such a complex debate that even adults our age have trouble discussing? Why is it that the educator, in this case a Catholic private school in the Houston area, why is it that they organized that field trip to go see that play about that topic?
Yeah.
Right? So the parents have made a consumer decision. As a parent, here's $12,000 a year because I made the decision as a consumer that I wanted a Catholic education.
Yeah.
The school did not fulfill that promise. The school failed in that because, sorry to those who would disagree, but in the Catholic Church, we do not accept. We tolerate, but we think people who are not straight are in sin. It's as simple as that. They are tolerated.
So
and loved.
You would accept. You would think that.
So you would think that the consumer, who as consumers, right. But the educator did not respect even that. So I can only imagine what happens in public school. Those topics have nothing to do with a 7-year-old.
Education, yeah.
I would go to the grave supporting this. Educators cannot bring topics of sexual choice when someone is 7 years old. That's it.
But here's the difference,
Simple,
Tony.
because it's education. They need to concentrate on math. They need to concentrate on science. Right?
Sophocles.
But,
yes.
Yeah.
But Tony, here's where I think all of this comes together. And I think it goes back to some of what Trevor's bringing up. While we may or may not be able, even as a consumer, to use our dollars to vote, right? Because in a capitalist society, we use our money to vote, our beliefs or our values or whatever. The beauty in this entire situation is that your children have a family unit to come home to whereby you as a parent can have the type of dialogue necessary to have a conversation with your child and give them a perspective that will afford them a way of thinking as they move forward. So as it may be not ideal with your Catholic beliefs, I am also, of course, very Catholic. Your Catholic, as we all, everybody here that's Catholic, raise your hands. What it did afford you was an opportunity for a discussion with your child. And if we, back to ARC Group's mission, if we as parents can instill in our children a way of looking at things from an intelligent perspective, from the perspective of let's ask questions. Why is this good? Why is this bad? Let's really truly break this down and explore things in an open manner, in an intelligent manner, back to your point about philosophy and understanding human nature and understanding science and understanding facts. And how do we weave religion into all of this? I think that's the real true value. And the one thing that I noticed about these ARC people is that the ARC people, right? Is that they're also grounded in a religious perspective.
Yeah, it did seem to come through a little bit. Yeah.
Which is part of what you're saying, Tony, which is there is a religious component to all of this. And even if there were not a religious component to all of this, we as a human society, even if you have no religion in your life, need to approach things from a more positive perspective. And of course, we know that God is what gives us that grounding.
Sure.
Because she is all-knowing. She is all-powerful.
Oh, here we go.
Right?
And, so I'll tell you something. That's another contradiction with today's world. And that is that, so I think we are, getting to the point where the dominant perspectives on life come all from, let's say, a minority perspective.
Amen.
So what I argue with this situation...
You mean like a smaller number of people, not...
Yes.
Not minorities.
So, am I 100% certain that there is a space for transsexual people in our world? Absolutely, yes. Absolutely.
It's a small space and it's over there.
But that is a minority that does, so their lifestyle doesn't have to take over from
why does it
what
have
the majority.
To be, why does it have to be the predominant thing that everybody's thinking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why do we keep on talking about these topics of
You're making the most noise.
It is actually liberal values. It is liberal values.
You mean liberal in the classic sense of liberal?
Yes, in the classic sense of liberal, it gave people with different sexual orientations all of the rights that they enjoy today, which are amazing. They are absolutely amazing. And by the way, to those members of the LGBTQ plus community who are protesting against Israel in the streets of London, Washington, D.C., and many other cities. Go to Palestine and see what is it like to be a member of the LGBTQ
Yeah.
plus community
Yeah.
in
Not
Palestine.
wrong.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, but wear your flak jacket.
That's right.
Yeah.
Simple as that. So isn't it interesting the contradiction, the hatred towards liberal values that brought so much prosperity to people
Yeah,
who have different orientations, and now there's almost like a betrayal
Yeah.
of those values. So anyway, going back to the topic of education, what I would say this group has to do.
We need
is-
an educated citizenry.
Yes, just I think what we need is stick to the subjects. The kids need to learn computer science. They need to learn math. They need to learn how to read and write because, oh my God, it is so difficult to find people who can write well. Some of the emails, and look, English is not my first language, but it is atrocious.
Yeah.
How the younger generations come into the workplace.
So I think so. The question
No.
here, I think, where they're asking the question is, how do we create how do we educate citizens better on these issues that we're concerned with? But what you're saying is, it really goes back to just fundamental education.
Yeah.
Okay, and so
they're
here's
little.
my soapbox. Here's my soapbox.
Yes.
How about all of those countries? How about all of those countries? I'm not going to say any names because
China.
Do they end with Stan?
that maybe where women do not achieve any level of education, maybe 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
What we're talking about here, what the art community is talking about, is providing a more positive outlook on a more positive and more excited outlook on our capability as human beings. When that softer perspective resides biologically inside of women, but yet there are numerous places in the world where women are not even afforded an education, and they're silenced.
Trevor's girlfriend told him that she wanted a watch for Christmas.
And he said no?
And he said, "Why do you need a watch? There's a clock on the stove."
He didn't say that. I bet he didn't, right?
So back to the question of an educated
She
citizen.
said, "Shut up and made the dinner I made you."
Yeah, she's like, shut up and eat it.
Shut up and eat it.
Shut up and eat it. No, but back to the responsible and educated citizenry. I think education, when we talk about all the things, it boils down to education. It starts in the home. It starts at home. It goes into the schools, and it is the responsibility, to Trevor's point, of our higher level education, our universities, to be providing us with the tools to think and not just repeat what it is that we're trying to shove down their throats.
Yeah.
So can I just point out one thing in this question here on the
About the stove?
form?
On
No.
the stove.
No. On the website, it does say, maybe it's worth noting, is how do we facilitate the development of a responsible and educated citizenry? So it's not, it seems like they may not be getting at necessarily the how to do it and how to implement it.
How do we
and the
instigate it?
technicalities.
How do we
cause to
instigate
happen?
it? Yeah.
No, no. But how do we facilitate the development? So how?
Yeah.
So less policy writing and more so guidance, or how to jumpstart that process.
Solving the education problem, particularly, sometimes it's hard for us to see these things outside.
And also it's educated and responsible citizens is what they're saying.
And responsible and educated. I mean, and we're a little long on time, so you know what we're gonna have to do.
2-part. There's 6 questions.
Let's
We need
do
to
a second part.
We need to do a second part and do the rest of the questions.
Okay.
But it's interesting that we got stuck on this education thing. It's true that in Western education, particularly in the United States and probably Europe, there was a point that started probably in the early 1900s in higher education, academia in the U.S., and has trickled down, where education began to became less and less about education and more about some agenda, some ideology, something that was, to where we have now, and so whether in the 1930s it was Marxist thinking that came into American academia, or whether it's in the 2020s where we have like this, gender, sexual stuff. The point is there's some sort of ideology that's wanting to be injected into the education system, and that cheats people out of an actual education, because instead all this time is being wasted on this bullshit. And that's a big problem to fix. Yeah. So fix that. Like, if you could fix that problem, then it would probably go a long way toward producing a citizenry that is able to actually talk to each other and embrace ideas and listen to the philosophers and think in context and do all the things that we ought to be able to do, except we're not able to do that because we don't have that education. So I think they're doomed.
Nah.
Because they're not going to get past the first problem. They're doomed.
I think so. The written press is so much better than television, right? So when I think of television, I actually do not watch.
Written press is so. I haven't watched television in so long. I can't imagine how bad it is. Because
when I think of
the
television,
written press is bad.
Press, right? It's so bad. It's so bad. It's really editorials. It's not. They're not really telling you the news. It's just the opinion of the opinion makers.
Yeah.
That they have in CNN or in Fox News or in.
Well, they have to fill up 24/7 all the different channels.
Yeah, something.
There's not enough news that happens.
There's
so
not
the only
enough
way that you
news
can
that
fill it up is with people saying all the shit that they think about what's happening.
Yeah. That would be a really good, actually, way of educating citizenry quickly. Would be to just recommend them to never watch the news on television. It is even a radical written press is better than just watching the news.
I think we're going down a different rabbit hole. I think
there are some HuffPost articles that I actually like, but so Delfina's doing the thing that I do when we're done. So we're gonna come back.
Yeah, we need to come back to this.
Trevor, we forgot to do a song again.
A song?
A song?
Well, since we're bountiful and Catholics in this room, I think we should do a classic.
Okay.
Kyrie eleison. Kyrie eleison.
Lord have mercy is probably a good way to wrap this up.